Let's talk happiness because ultimately, what it gets down to as a business owner, as a husband, as a wife, as a partner, as brother, as anything that we are in a role in life, is that we want as people to feel good and we don't want to feel bad. And that's very easy to do in the short term. But we also want this to grow over time. We don't want to just take cocaine and then take more cocaine and collapse, or cheat on our partners and create lots of short-term pleasures and destroy a marriage. We actually want to sustainably improve our lives over time, to feel good and a little bit better and a little bit better. And it's that algorithm of sustainability that is really what so many of us are looking for as we learn and grow. And so I wanted to share a little bit of my own journey in that direction. And one of the things that I found interesting about American culture through the literature of Sonia Lyubomirsky, who's one of the few, I think she's a sociologist, but one of the few people that has received a decent amount of money to study happiness, is that after survival is met, if you're poor and don't know where you're going to sleep or can't get safe food, then money is a huge deal and needs to be addressed as a high priority. And for an individual in the United States, that's somewhere between maybe $50 and, in a very few cases, up to maybe $90,000. That's the amount of money needed to buy food, buy health insurance, pay rent, pay down debt, have a good car, etc., etc. But after that, I would call it a survival and safety of survival threshold is met, then money has a very low correlation with happiness. In other words, before we hit that $50,000 to $90,000 mark as an individual in the United States, it's a huge deal. But after that point, going from 100,000 to 200,000 or 200,000 to 200 million, you don't see a similar correlation with increase in happiness. And when you look at objects, and I've noticed that in my own life, that like the first time I flew to the Philippines and had my first 2 weeks in 5-star hotels and doing a lot of things on my bucket list, it was absolutely incredible. And the next time, also pretty good. But there's this thing called hedonic adaptation. And what it means is that no matter how great things are, our brain, if they happen repeatedly, recategorizes normal to be what was really great. So you buy a new Mercedes, it's your first Mercedes, and it's wonderful. And then after 3 months, a year, 3 years at the most, the Mercedes is normal. It's not wonderful anymore. It is the norm. So for something to be wonderful, what does it have to be? A jetpack, flying the Concorde? It has to be something new. And this is really tricky because there's only so much fabulous stuff out there. And I found myself thinking that it's odd that I'm eating the finest fresh squeezed organic orange juice. I'm having some of the finest coffee in the world. I'm eating, organic croissants and custom jams and the most beautiful cheeses flown in from Europe, and it's become normal Because if you can afford it and do that, then why wouldn't you do it all the time? But whatever you do all the time becomes normal. And, it's the same with getting married. Obviously, presuming there's a rational basis behind it, you're marrying someone because you enjoy spending time with them, or think you will, more than anyone else on the planet. That's why you pick them. And yet them, over time, can become normal. And someone else who over time might not be as enjoyable to talk with and get to know and do things with suddenly becomes attractive, not because they're better, but because they're new. And this is a little bit of a crisis that I've dealt with in my own life. And because at some point, after achieving thousands of goals, at some point, it's like, at least I came to understand that, another job, a newer truck, this just wasn't going to do it anymore. And so the answer, the thing becomes, what do you do when you've kind of peaked out on materialistic gratification? And our culture doesn't have a lot to say about that because we're quite a materialistic culture. For me, I took a tour around the world and discovered the delights of less materialistic cultures, more ritualistic cultures, more relationship-oriented cultures, and so that's one thing to do. There's also the opportunity to grow a nourishing family, to bring some of that back into our culture. There's art. There's focusing on the client relationship more than on growing the company, to actually spend time with clients that you enjoy. And it's to explore some of those things that I created the Advanced Landscape Success course, because that's one of those things. I've been learning and growing from other experts that I've hired as mentors. Anytime I've found a great mentor, I've paid them whatever they wanted, because, if you learn one great thing that changes your career for the better, it's worth any amount. And so it's fun to give back. It's fun to teach. It's also fun to break some of the rules. And I mentioned that. I thought about that in making some of these videos, that it's not entirely cool for a guy to wear a beautiful necklace. And yet these are things that I find quite interesting, because this necklace has my favorite restaurant in Thailand, by the way, is a restaurant where I can dance. And I knew that because, I was trying to work a headache out of my neck, and a little bit of sugar, so a nice fresh coconut, milk, and it's a Thai Italian place, and they have the best pizza I've tasted in the world, and there's wonderful brick oven and all of that, and there's this couple that run the restaurant, and they actually run two restaurants. One's called Rice, and then right next is Pomodoro. But the one has a Thai kitchen, the other the Italian. But you can really order from both of them at either place. And so I was having this feast, and she was playing this great music. The woman runs the Thai place; she's Thai, and there's an Italian guy that runs the Pomodoro. And there weren't a lot of people, and so I was dancing, and trying to move this headache out. And And she had a blast with it. She loved it, and she insisted I was drunk. I hadn't had a drop of alcohol. But, I've paid attention in travels around the world to things that create what I would call, a disproportionate amount of fun or joy or healing for the amount of time, money invested. And that's come, with some thought to be my definition of intelligence. That for a human to be intelligent, they have to pick the path of transforming energy into well-being that's the most efficient. So that one's intelligence could be measured by the efficiency with which $10 or a tree or an hour is turned into human well-being. If you're a human being, then creating human well-being is intelligent. And if you can create tons of intelligence for free or tons of well-being for free, it's more sophisticated than spending $1 billion and being miserable. And so that's my definition of intelligence. And so I was dancing, and I remembered her because she saw this necklace and insisted I got it in a little Tibetan store in Fairfax, California, where I live. And so, she wanted a necklace like this and asked me to buy it. But for whatever reason, I find it a little bit bizarre. This necklace has been making people happy. They comment on it, etc. My dog, Philip, is a bit like that. Again, oodles of happiness over Philip. And, you complete a $100,000 landscape on time, and I don't see as much happiness as people playing with my dog. And so, I try and pay attention to what actually brings joy. And for me, it's things like working the hours that I want to work. It's bending the rules a little bit. And this was something I was pleased to find in some of Tim Ferriss's book. If you haven't read The 4-Hour Workweek, it was one of the instigations that started some very positive trends in my business. But, Tim talked about from time to time, just doing something completely outlandish, going into a Starbucks and laying on the floor and drinking coffee or something like that for 15 minutes, just to develop the ability to think outside the box, but also the rush of doing something a little new. And I know I've gone shopping in my pajamas a few times because, it doesn't hurt anyone. And it wakes people up a little bit. And they're comfortable. I mean, pajamas are the most comfortable clothes on the planet. And so, coming back to this theme, my point is that it's not going to do you or I any good to come to the end of a 20, 40, 60-year career and say, we've grown the fleet from one truck to 500 trucks. We've, grown the gross revenues from this to this. We've expanded the crew. We're now, doing X million a year, but we're not really any happier. We're not enjoying life maybe even as much as when we were just, taking care of a few nice clients' gardens and, and shooting the breeze. I've noticed, for example, that going from, quite a low hourly rate for design. I think I remember when it was $35 an hour, and that seemed high at the time, some 20 or so years ago, to $175 an hour. There's a certain price point where I can get it, but which clients don't enjoy talking with me as much. They're coming out like, is this paid design time? And so there's a trade-off between getting the most money and having a great, connection with clients. And so, part of the data supports that, when the income is lower than you need to be comfortable, it's important to maximize income over, shooting the breeze. But at some point in our career where, we're over the 150 or whatever the 1,000 point that is really makes a difference in well-being, where it's actually more fun to spend money. It's more fun to spend money in ways that create more well-being than to deprive or curate a life that is all about money. That's just what the data supports. And I found that to be true. And so that's the subject of this video.